Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Politics here at The Hindu with me, Nistula Hebbar, where we unpack the news making the headlines in domestic politics. This week saw the swearing in of chief ministers, fuel price hikes after the election season got over, and things getting personal in Maharashtra with the Thackeray in-laws, the Patankar family, getting raided via the ED or the Enforcement Directorate. We will, however, make our way to West Bengal, where in a horrifically violent incident, 8 people, including a child and 6 women, were charred to death in what looked like an intra-party rivalry within the Trinamool Congress in Birbhum district. What were the reasons behind the incident and what does it say about politics in West Bengal will be the subject of this episode of Talking Politics. There is little doubt that the violence at Baktui, located more than 220 kilometers from Kolkata and lying in the Birbhum district of the state, was in retaliation to the murder of the Trinamool Congress Deputy Pradhan, Bhadu Sheikh, who was killed on the evening of March 21st. Now, Bhadu Sheikh was, of course, Deputy Pradhan, local worthy, and had his fingers in many pies in the district's businesses like sand, stone chips, and coal businesses. And they were certainly rent-seeking arrangements, and there seemed to be a tug of war between him and other factions of the Trinamool Congress that were trying to get control of these businesses and of panchayat funds, which as Deputy Pradhan Bhadu Sheikh had a lot of control over. This was a fight within the Trinamool Congress between different factions of the Trinamool Congress, and the blame for Bhadu Sheikh's murder was also laid by his supporters at the door of rivals within the party. Please remember that in West Bengal, in the local body elections, the Trinamool Congress has had a sweep, and in many areas, the opposition candidates did not even file nomination papers, and in many panchayats and local bodies, Trinamool Congress members have been elected unopposed. In such a dominating situation, the violence most of the time, or the differences in opinion or political and economic competition in these little areas is not between members of different political parties but factions of the same dominating political party. So, in less than an hour after this incident, Bhadu Sheikh's supporters went on a rampage in the village, picking and choosing houses belonging to rival Trinamool Congress camps in the village, and it was the house of Sonu Sheikh or Sona Sheikh, once an associate of Bhadu Sheikh, that 7 charred bodies were recovered, including 6 women and 1 child. Even though people had assembled in 2 different groups, the victims of the fire and Bhadu Sheikh's relatives at 2 different places to meet with West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee on Wednesday, when she had gone to visit that area after the incident. Both these factions still owe their allegiance to the state's ruling party. The violence was a result of a factional feud which was brewing between the supporters of the Trinamool Congress. Of course, there have been other incidents of violence, sometimes intra-party feuds, like in the case of, on March 13th, in the case of a municipal councillor of the Trinamool Congress called Anupam Datta in Panihati. He was killed while riding pillion on a motorcycle. That murder was captured horrifically on a CCTV. And before that, just hours before that, a Congress councillor, Topon Kondu, was shot dead in Jhalda municipality in Purulia district. Now, Jhalda municipality had thrown up a hung verdict, and Mr. Kandu's supporters say that he was under pressure to lend support to the Trinamool Congress there because his was the vote that could break the logjam there of the hung verdict. The murder of youth leader Onish Khan in Howrah, when the police broke into his house and in the early hours of February 19, has also created a furor. In Baktui specifically, the dispute was about, as I said earlier, about shares, or bhokra as it's called in Bangla. There was a dispute about the share from panchayat funds and businesses linked to sand, coal and stone chips. This shows not just that there is area domination politics that's going on, that one worthy, the local big guy, who would promise local support to political parties, would get control of panchayats, but also of the local businesses. And there are not too many local businesses. There are welfare schemes that the government runs, but in terms of investments, there is still a problem, and therefore rent seeking is quite high in the countryside from existing businesses like sand, coal, and stone chips. That seems to be the situation that gave rise to this horrific crime. The West Bengal police denied that this had anything to do with politics and had everything to do with deep personal enmity. But the lack of opposition in the state, especially at the level of local self-governance, shows that intra-party rivalries become extremely important. But this particular crime stood out because women and children were targeted in such a heinous way. Opposition BJP, CPM, and Congress sent their teams to Baktui. Some were stopped en route in order to meet the families of the victims. The nature of the mandate that the TMC got in the last polls and its complete domination of local self-governing bodies has meant that the entire political weight of this incident will have to be borne by the TMC itself. In fact, the Calcutta High Court, which handed over the probe of this incident to the CBI on March 25th, had very strong words to say. The court had taken suo motu cognizance of this, and I quote, brutal incident at Baktui village, and in its order it described the incident, again in quotes, one such exceptional case where requisite direction is required. Now I quote straight away from the order. The court says, we are of the opinion that facts and circumstances of the case demand that in the interest of justice and to instill confidence in society and to have fair investigation to dig out the truth, it is necessary to hand over the investigation to the CBI. This was an order delivered by a divisional bench of Chief Justice Prakash Srivastava and Justice Rajashri Bharadwaj. The court also observed that the shocking incident of burning of at least 8 persons, including a child, and as many as 6 women, has shaken the conscience of society and has nationwide ramifications. Whether or not this would have nationwide ramifications, it has certainly exposed what is now turning out to be an underbelly of TMC's very, very dominating politics in West Bengal, that there is a huge tug of war which is happening in the countryside among members of its own party, and it is taking a very, very violent turn indeed. And there is no recourse for the party to be blaming any opposition group for that violence. This is all I have for you in Talking Politics this week. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.